Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about arrays and methods. Basically, we're going to pick up the conversation from the last PowerPoint that was talking about arrays as parameters and see how they interact with methods. So here we get the exact same method we were talking about last time, where it's got this array toString, which is basically just going to take our array in and turn it into a big string to be able to get a look inside of it. It'd be nice for debugging purposes or for final output. We also get the zero element method. The zero element method takes in an array of ints and takes in a location. Assuming that location is in bounds to prevent any array index out of bounds exceptions, we're going to set that slot to 0. The power of this statement is really that the fact that this array can be changed inside this method. The array is a reference variable, and reference variables access an object. All arrays are objects. So you can actually modify the object inside this method, which is a pretty powerful statement. All right, in this next slide, we're taking a look at forking the last example to add a new method called zeroAll that's going to set everybody to 0. The last picture and this picture are both hyperlinks, and they take us to a web page called IDE1. IDE1 is where the code is deposited, and we can take a look at it. Okay, so here we have the exact same code that we had before. It also has an example underneath of a tester to be able to show how it all works. What we're going to do is you could copy and paste from here, and also note that what's cool about this is if you hyperlink over something, it takes you to the API to describe what is a string in Java. It's really helpful if you're trying to look for an obscure method that maybe you forget the spelling of. It's nice to be able to jump to that and look through your options. I'm going to fork this. Forking it allows me to take the current code that's already written there and then modify it. The best part about this is I don't overwrite the original code to step on anybody else's feet, and I can just tweak this as necessary. So now I get an actual coding environment that I can work in. And what I want to do is I want to copy this zero element because I want to replicate a lot of that code. And I want to paste that down here. So I'm going to change this to zeroAll. And I don't need an exact slot for that. So I want to get rid of that part. So basically what I want to do here is I want to cycle through the array and set everybody to 0. So I don't need an if statement because I need some way to cycle. So maybe I'll make a for loop. Start at 0 while I'm less than the length of the array, which I don't know off the top of my head, but I can use the length variable to access that. And then I can say I++. And what I want to do is I want to take slot I and set that equal to 0. So now I have that zeroAll. To take a look at what that might look like in the tester, I already have a before and after picture there. So maybe I just want to grab the after picture. Throw that down here. I want to call zeroAll, not zero element. Still feed it S. And maybe I'll change this to after all. And then array toString. So that's perfect. So this really just changes my tester to let me know whether or not that one method worked. And so that should zeroAll for everybody. I have to play around with my zoom. All right, so I reset everybody to 0. I added a call in the tester for the new method. So that's all good. So here we get another example. The main's up top, which makes it easier to find. I have this array of doubles called favnums, which is just a list. Today's favorite number is random value favnums. So random value is a method in-house. I don't need any dot operations to get to it. And I'm going to feed it this favnums array, which is expecting an array of doubles. So we're all good. This line of code is a bit complicated. I've got math.random, which remember is going to give me a decimal between 0 and 0.9 repeating. I'm going to take that decimal and I'm going to multiply it by array.length. So this is the length of the array that just got passed. So it's going to give me some decimal between 0 and the length of the array. This int casts it into an integer because I can't have that decimal value, and so now I'm going to get something between 0 and the length minus 1. So this is basically any random number in bounds. I'm then going to take that random number and I'm going to access that slot of the array. So what this does is it basically pulls a random choice from this list, which is kind of a neat feature. Underneath it I have this addNum method. Now I'm not actually using that in the main, but it's here anyway, so let's take a peek at it. AddNumber takes in an array of doubles and it takes in a new value called the new guy. It's going to return an array of doubles also. Now, this is an important kind of a split decision kind of thing. It's one of those weird occurrences. I can modify this double array as much as I want. I can change the numbers in it, I can set them to 0, I can play around with it as much as I want. However, I cannot change the size of an array. Once you make an array, it's that fixed size forever. So if I want to add an extra slot into the array, modifying current is not good enough. What I actually have to do is make a new array and return that when this method is over. So I can modify the contents as much as I want, but I can't reassign it. I can't reinstantiate the object. That doesn't work inside of a method. You can modify the variables, you can use the methods, but you can't actually reassign it. So I'm going to make this new array of type double. I'm going to call it larger, which is the new double, so I'm instantiating. I'm going to take current.length, which was my old array, and I'm going to add 1 to it. So it's, instead of being the exact same size as current, it's 1 slot larger. I'm then going to do a for loop, and I'm going to cycle through, and I'm going to copy the stuff from current and put it into larger. If you're better at the libraries in Java, there are alternative ways to do this, but I thought the algorithm of actually running through it might be better. Once that's all done, I then want to take the last slot of larger, which is larger.length minus 1, and I want to assign that position in larger the new guy. So essentially this allows me to take my array and add a single slot. So far as an economic standpoint, this is maybe not the best way to do it, because if I'm adding new things to my array repeatedly, I get a lot of runtime because I'm doing this for loop, and I also get a lot of memory because I have to ditch the old array each time. So there are more advanced ways to be able to just sneak one more attribute in. I just wanted to practice this idea of working with an array. All right, if you want some further reading, you can either check out the chortle notes or you can check out this cool webpage that I found at Princeton. It's a little more complicated than we need to go. It deals with some of the future things we're going to see in this chapter, but it's still a nice resource that has some programming examples and some just pedagogy examples to give you an idea of how arrays work. All right, enjoy the lab.